Blessings and good morning from Bodhipala Monastery in Mount Pleasant, South Australia. I'm visiting here this weekend for the second anniversary of the monastery. This monastery has been in existence about 2 years exactly, and it's to the east of Adelaide, the capital of South Australia, set on about 250 acres of farmland. Used to be a sheep and cow farm, farm of grazing. That was established a long time ago. It's got a long history. But a few years ago, the previous owner, I think, was feeling it wasn't really making much money, so they put it on sale. And because it's an old farm, all the buildings here are quite old and a bit run down, old stone cottages. So they didn't sell it for too much. And we've been coming to visit Adelaide and the Buddhists of Adelaide for many years now, from Melbourne, where I usually live, Buddha Bodhipala Monastery. For many years we've been visiting teachers down here, like Lumpur Liam, Lumpur Anand, Lumpur Plian used to visit Adelaide regularly when he was alive. And even in the old days, Lumpur Bunyarit, who was a famous meditation master in Thailand, he used to live in Adelaide, in Ratanapratip. So there's a strong connection between the people of Adelaide and Buddhism and the Thai forest tradition. So we've been coming to visit here for many years, got to know some of the Buddhists, and many people had the idea there should be a monastery, a forest monastery near Adelaide. So 2 years ago, or just over 2 years ago, some of the Buddhists from Melbourne decided they would get together, pool their resources and purchase this property, this farm. It's called Stony Banks Farm, that was its original name. And there's a number of buildings here that make it kind of convenient for the Sangha to come and live, even though they're a bit run down. There's 3 little cottages which make kutis, and there's a house, and there's a little meditation hall, or a hall that we can use for meditation. And there's some infrastructure, there's a road, there's a water supply. They collect the rainwater here, and there's a dam. So there was enough for when the property was purchased for it to straight away become a small functioning monastery. All that was needed was Sangha. So some of the Sangha members from Bodhipala Monastery near Melbourne came down and have been living here ever since, and spending their time practicing the Dhamma and trying to improve the place. Of course, once you have a Buddhist monastery, however small, however new, then you have an opportunity for many people, both Sangha and laity, to do good things and to come and practice the Dhamma. So since day one, local people from near and far have been coming to help at the monastery, just with the material side of things, offering food, coming to volunteer their time to help improve the property, repair the buildings, build new buildings, and so on. And then joining in meditation sessions, chanting sessions, teaching sessions that we've been holding regularly. So little by little, many people have come to get to know the place and come and participate in it. And that's the beauty and the value of having a Buddhist monastery. It becomes a center, a place where people can, when they have the faith and the time, the energy, they can come to do good things, to practice the Dhamma in many different ways as well. Monastery is a place where different types of people, men and women, young and old, can participate in different ways. Some people like to come and meditate and listen to Dhamma. Some people like to come and just do gardening and help on the working bees on a voluntary basis. Some people like to offer food. Some people like to just come and chat to the monks and look at the view. There's many different things that make up a monastery, many different people, many different activities. But the important thing is a monastery is constant. It can become a constant in people's lives. Many things in our world are changing all the time. The economy, society, especially with this period of the COVID pandemic, all kinds of things are changing, often quite rapidly. But a monastery is a place that can provide some stability, something that's constant. The teachings that you receive in a Buddhist monastery are constant in the sense that they come from the words of the Buddha, teachings on the practice of generosity, virtue, meditation. These have been established and practiced since the time of the Buddha and proven to be a way that helps human beings to understand themselves and be more peace with themselves. So every time you come to a monastery, you're coming to connect with those teachings, to hear them, to put them into practice, to see the Sangha who live here and practice with them. So at the moment we have Ajahn Yanadipo, Ajahn Sataro and Samanera Nipako living here, providing a good example of practice and leading the Buddhist community here. So every time someone visits a monastery, they're getting re-energized in their own practice. As we all know, it's hard to practice at home. There's so many distractions and many duties and responsibilities we have. Sometimes it's easy to stray from the path of practice. But when you come to a monastery, you get that revitalization, readjustment, putting you back onto the path. You get a chance to hear the Dhamma, contemplate the Dhamma, and do good things in a good atmosphere. Everybody says when they step into Bodhipala Monastery here, they feel peaceful very quickly. We're out of town, in a quiet area in the hills, so the atmosphere is very conducive to both quiet meditation and contemplation. The practice of the resident Sangha and laymen who live here, they're practicing in a virtuous way, living in a way of simplicity, peacefulness. As you can hear, there's birds and animals all around, so even they like monasteries because they're safe. The monastery is a safe, secure place. So a monastery becomes a refuge for many people. There's the physical place, the land, the buildings, but then there's the spiritual part of the monastery, the actual goodness that arises in your heart when you come to visit a monastery, even if it's only for a few hours. It becomes a source of inspiration and a source of strength in the practice of the Buddhist path. And that's probably why over time monasteries tend to grow and have more of a role in people's lives over time, because they see the value of it. And when we first came here 2 years ago, we did know many Buddhists in Adelaide already, but we weren't quite sure how the monastery would progress, how things would go. But very quickly we've seen that there are plenty of good people around with kind hearts and with interest in the Buddhist teachings who have come forward to support the monastery and participate. And that's what monasteries do. They draw out the goodness in the people around. And they're not always Buddhists. And there's many people who come to the monastery to help in different ways and join in, who are not Buddhist by birth and might not even call themselves Buddhist, but they appreciate what's being done here. They appreciate the purity of the Sangha, living very simply in the same way that monks lived in the time of the Buddha. They don't have an income, they don't have any personal wealth, they just have their own faith in the Buddha, Dhamma Sangha, and their practice of the Dhamma Vinaya to rely on. But they draw support from the local community, so people are willing to come and help something that is for everybody. A monastery is a place for everybody, so people like to come and help in different ways. And it draws that out of anyone, even somebody who's just a neighbour or lives down the road might come and appreciate some of the good things that are going on here. And of course it draws people who are Buddhists and know about Buddhism, know about Ajahn Chah and his teachings, sometimes even from overseas. They come to stay here now. Within 2 years, have many visitors coming to stay, coming to visit. And that's the power of the Dhamma. So the monastery is 2 years old. We say, if you compare a monastery to a human being, a 2-year-old person, a little boy, a little girl, they're just learning to walk. They're still falling over. They're still bumping into things because they're new to the world. Monastery is a bit like that. The monks have good eyesight and wisdom, but just the teething problems of building a monastery are there. The bumping into things might be just learning to get the water system going, or the sewage system going, or building some toilets, or making the accommodation livable. For the lay people, learning to regularly offer food to the monks, because the monks have to eat. So that's probably the most important thing in a monastery, is the supply of food. And just coming to participate in meditation programs and working bees and things. Things go in stops and starts. Sometimes things are going well, sometimes there's difficulties and obstacles, sometimes there's no rain, so they've planted a lot of trees here and the trees won't grow because there's no rain, and then suddenly you get a torrent of rain and the road is flooded out and you get all kinds of other problems. Life is like that, and monasteries are no exception. There are ups and downs and difficulties, just like a little baby learning to walk. But you could say the monastery is now up and running. It's learnt to walk to some extent. There is support. The monks are not starving, but there's plenty more that can be done. The monastery still needs to grow. The accommodation needs to be improved. The facilities need to be improved. And our hearts and minds still need to be improved in the practice of the Dhamma. To practice the Dhamma, one needs to be developing many, many qualities on a regular basis. The practice of generosity, practicing sila, being restrained in one's speech, one's actions, not harming other people through one's words and deeds, practicing kindness, compassion, forgiveness, letting go, and then developing the skills of meditation, mindfulness, contemplation, states of samadhi. These are our challenges as Buddhists. We're learning to practice in our daily life, but using the monastery as a focal point, maybe a place to come and receive guidance, get some good examples of how to practice, and then we can take that away and continue to practice at home. But we have to keep working with our hearts and minds, because they're not yet totally peaceful. We have our peaceful times, and sometimes we get stressed, we have suffering still in our lives. And this is why we practice the Dhamma, is to understand where suffering comes from and how to overcome it. One teaching Ajahn Chah used to give was that in every good thing there may also be something bad. In every bad thing there may also be something good. We have to learn to look at our lives and our experience and learn from our experience, learn how to contemplate. So when things are going good and well, that's good, but be careful, because maybe some attachment can slip in, or some heedlessness, carelessness can slip in, and we start to slip back and take everything for granted, and then suddenly conditions can change and we get caught out. Or sometimes we're facing stress and suffering in our life, and we might first think things are hopeless and too difficult. But if we persist with our practice, establish mindfulness, contemplate our experience, we can learn from suffering. Often suffering is where we grow in our practice. We learn from our mistakes, we become a bit wiser. We learn from painful situations, unpleasant things that happen. We learn how to contemplate them, not to attach to them, but to move on and not let our mind get caught up in the painful situations or the sufferings of life. This is Dhamma practice. Always being able to look at our experience from different angles and contemplate to see where suffering comes from, but then how to overcome it, how to let it go. And a monastery is a place for learning that. It's a place where you're reminding yourself how to practice, what you have to do, and then putting it into practice. So generally the atmosphere in the monastery gets better and better the more people who practice here. more good things are done, people become wiser, more peaceful, happier. They value the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, the teachings, the practice more. So the monastery moves from being an external thing into our own hearts and minds. It becomes a source of inspiration and a sort of source of strength, peace and happiness within our own hearts and minds. And some people have already said, they can't come to the monastery every day, of course, they have other commitments in their life, but just thinking of the monastery here, thinking of the Sangha practicing, thinking of what takes place in the monastery, the good atmosphere, the good activities, thinking of that makes them happy. Just knowing that there are people practicing like this makes them happy. So maybe for today I'll just say this much, but wish you all well, and may the blessings of the Triple Gem guide you, protect you, and may you progress in your Dhamma practice.